Well, thanks for everyone joining us this morning. Hopefully we'll cover a couple points that you can take away. So we're going to get into, the causes of a stagnant BBS program. Will be pretty obvious for you. We'll point out a couple to look out for. More so, we're going to spend our time is what do you do about it? So hopefully that's what you came today to take away. Some of them will be kind of obvious. Some of them are going to be not so obvious, but more so you came, you have a BBS program and it might be in the wall and the feedback is it's kind of old, it's boring, it's kind of stagnant, and that S word gets thrown around and it looks a lot of different ways for a lot of different people. So we've got some research, some science, and just a lot of experience and best practices that hopefully you can take back and revitalize your program and not get to the point where, hey, let's just scrap it. We're not getting anything out of it. So with that, I'll just kind of get in and go over our key points that we want to try and cover. So we're going to kind of look what some indicators of a stagnant program can be, common themes and causes. Once we understand the root cause, then we can fix it. Some techniques, some data. So we're going to look at two recent revamps that we're involved with in the data, because sometimes if you go to do a revamp and you want to insert a little investment, a operating team and a CFO and that staff, they kind of want to see what's the point of diminishing returns and what can we expect in those things. So we have a couple that you can take back and help load your lips, and lessons learned from others from their revamps when they revamped their BBS programs, whether it was a formal or informal. We have versions of both. We have one that was a formal, and then we'll show you one that was an informal. So you can see both and the results they've seen from it. And then just some common best practices along the way. Some things that kind of stand out in a stagnant BBS program, and these are pretty, pretty basic, you know them, low participation, pencil whipping. The term pencil whipping, if you're not familiar with it, pencil whipping is basically, a person goes to a form or electronic, whichever method you're using, and they completely make up the observation. They're completely just checking boxes. They never actually did the observation. They never actually talked to anyone. It's completely fake and made up. Typically, those are going to be derivative from programs that are mandatory. They have a quota. There's a scorecard, score sheet, some type of climate metric, performance evaluation. Those can be causal factors to pencil whipping. So as you're going through the thought process of, okay, we have a stagnant program, and finding that fine line and that balance between motivating people to be involved in your BBS program and maybe are you driving pencil whipping? That's where you got to know your environment. You got to know your culture. Okay, no one's going to know it better than those who are in it every single day. Some cultures need those metrics. Okay, others maybe more the volunteer model, and we'll kind of unwrap that onion a little later in the program today. Low participation is very common in stagnant programs. Clean sheeting is a term where a person will go in and every single box gets checked all the time and it's always safe. The bare minimum gets put in. Clean sheeting it becomes very prevalent in stagnant programs. Barrier identification is where the safe choice isn't available, and in a BBS program you allow a portion in there where people can identify physical deficiencies or knowledge gaps or system failures and those things. Typically in stagnant programs, common is low barrier identification or none at all. They don't see the point in putting them in, nothing gets done with them. So those are some consistencies that can point out when you have a stagnant program. Employee feedback is low. Maybe you do a feedback session where you offer, hey, at 7:30 we're gonna have donuts in the break room for 15 minutes. We want feedback, and no one shows up but your steering team. Those can be signs of stagnant programs where people don't see the point. We're going to look at data on narrow field of view. Another indicator of a potential stagnant program. Maybe you have great participation. Everyone hits their quota. You got some clean sheeting going on, but not that much. You don't think there's pencil whipping, but the same behaviors on the checklist are getting noticed by the same people every single month. They're making no changes. And you see where they could identify other behaviors in the process and just their narrow field of view. They're looking at the same thing all the time, and that's it. That's what they're comfortable with. That's another indicator of a stagnant program, and we'll kind of undress here a few slides down the road what you can do to help ramp that up. Ultimately, programs break down when people don't see or hear how they're doing anymore. The biggest thing is, what's in it for me? Why should I go out of my way to go have a conversation with a coworker about safety when nothing gets done with it in the first place? I fill out this sheet, it goes in the box, the HR person puts a lid on it, and it goes in the super secret bat cave. Really, when we go in to do revamps, that is one of the biggest things that we hear. The breakdown is the people stopped seeing the point in doing it. They weren't getting feedback. They weren't being told how they're doing. The program wasn't visible. They no longer saw the motivation behind doing it. That's the biggest breakdown in stagnant programs. So what I have here is from a recent conference that we did. We had over 200 individuals. So here's some data for you to take back. We had over 200 individuals, over 180 different companies presented, all different industries, that all had BBS programs. And I just asked them, with audience response clicker device technology, what are you finding as your biggest breakdown? So this isn't just my opinion at DEKRA. This isn't what DEKRA and Joe Melton thinks. This is what others that are out there facing some of the same challenges. And it's those negative attitudes. Actually having the conversation. Are you putting in barriers in your process? Are you putting in unintentional consequences where the person is inherently going out and looking at only the coaching, the corrective, the negative, the bad things? Are people having the conversation? Do they see the value in stopping and talking to their coworkers? Those are two big recent breakdowns that we're seeing lately. Another visual that I was talking about on field of view focus. This is the newest research and data that we have on field of view. And as you can see from different individuals at different locations, that typically in BBS programs that may be targeting anywhere from 12 to 15 to 20 to 30 different behaviors. Really, when it comes right down to it, people are focusing in on only 3 or 4. There's a very, very minimal field of view. And this is the research that we're coming up with at DEKRA. And what we found is field of view focus has been really narrow. And even from organization to organization, it's been pretty consistent. So if you have the ability to do an assessment on your current BBS program on how many behaviors are we looking at in our checklist and how many are being utilized, and then look at the percentage between safe and unsafe or at risk, whatever term that it is that you use, flagging variables, whatever methodology you follow, what's the variance from behavior to behavior? Do you have 3 or 4 behaviors that are getting utilized 70 to 80% more than the others? Those are flags going up of a potentially narrow field of view stagnant program. Some opportunity to get more bang for your buck by opening up and doing some targeting. And we'll kind of talk about that, what others have seen as a result of potentially, targeting, safety blitzing, whatever terminology you want to use. Those are some different things that can help process. Tips for assessing your current BBS program. Ask yourself, is it visible? Do you have a brand identity to your BBS program? Okay. Is it somebody else's program that you license or lease? Is it homegrown in your own, formal, informal? Doesn't matter. If you have your own name for your program and you have your brand, ask yourselves, if I wasn't in my seat right now as the safety person or as the team lead or the facilitator, whatever it is that your role is, if you weren't in that role, how would you know about the program? Is it easy to see? What gets seen gets done. You know, easy propaganda, fairly inexpensive propaganda can go a long way. So what I mean by that is simple posters. Do you have visuals? Do you have logos, t-shirts, polos, hats? I mean, all that stuff, coffee cups, stickers, TV screens in the break room that have constant visuals of your BBS program. Are your team leads kicking off toolbox talks with, hey, our latest, whatever the name of your program is, you know, whether you call it core, score, shield, whatever it is, whatever your BBS program, hot rods, hey, our latest hot rod numbers are this, and this is what we're doing. We got 95% participation. We got a 16% coaching rate out there. Here's how we're all making a difference. That's where the rubber meets the road. If people can see it, then it's that reminder. Getting the metrics out to them. A lot of times what happens in organizations is the metrics of how people are making a difference, not just observations completed. I think that's one thing that gets lost is, well, we let them know how many are done. Okay, great. What else do you let them know? Nothing. Oh, well, you don't play how many at risk are identified, how many barriers were identified, removed, and fixed in a timely manner, what behaviors are being identified, at what rate, what the greatest frequency of coaching by shift or time of day or job department. All that information is fairly easy to come by. Are you looking at it? If you're not, do you have the ability? Challenge your internal IT staff to get that information for you. Diversify. Get it displayed. And if you have an organization or location where multiple languages are spoken, but you only post this stuff in English, there's a breakdown right there. Get it in the languages in which people will understand. Observation evaluation. When you're assessing, do you have the ability, you know, go out and do co-observation. So as you're doing an evaluation, I don't like to use the word audit. People say, well, you got to audit your BBS program. Audit just has that negative connotation, like I don't know, like the tax guy is going to come around and you're getting audited. Co-observations, in just using the word, we're evaluating our program. When you do a co-observation with the individual or a coaching, whatever methodology or term you use, when you're with the observer, looking at, are they only looking at the negative or are they looking at positive too? Are they only looking at 3 or 4 things or are they looking at a wide focus? So there's a lot of area of opportunity to coach in that moment. But the biggest linchpin is are they actually talking to the person? Are they letting them know what they've done well? Are they letting them know how they're making a difference and letting them know that we want them to do it that way in the future? Those are the 3 big things in a quick conversation, whether it's formal or informal, that are super impactful. We know from over 50, 60 years of behavior-based safety is what makes it work. It's letting people know that someone saw you doing it correctly, let them know how you're making a difference in your environment and how you're making other people safe, and then letting them know that's what you want you to do in the future. Those 3 key concepts to the conversation are what drive it home. That's where it gets lost, is in the conversation. Driving home that the conversation quality is what drives the BBS program. As you're assessing your current program, and what we're finding in our revamps that we're getting involved with is that that's where it's getting lost. Is the conversations, either aren't happening or they're not happening at that high of a level. And typically, what we're finding is 50 to 60% of the observations, the conversation never happened in the first place, is the data that we have right now. You also add a quick assessment on your current checklist. Are you using single, multiples? Do you have categories, multiple behaviors? Does it look like an inspection? How are those behaviors written? We could spend an entire session just on checklist evaluation by itself. There's a lot of tools out there on Google. If this is something you would like more information on, shoot me a note afterwards. I have a full slide deck just on checklist evaluation. Getting a third party set of eyes on it can help, but simple things you can do is rule of 8. That's a personal thing that I like to stick to. It's not necessarily the most scientific, but it's more Joe tested and field approved. What we found when a checklist has less than 8 behaviors in less than 8 words, you know, kind of a baseline, a median line. It's not, you know, not always going to be perfect. Sometimes it's more than 8 words. But if you follow that median line, it keeps it simple and it's easy to understand at the frontline level. And we've really, really found that simple rule of 8 can go a long way. Assessing your current checklist, is it paper only or is it electronic? Do you have both capabilities? Do you have multiple language capabilities? These can all be potential breakdowns. I have seen in recent rollouts, not even rollouts, but revamps, that they put out new checklists and then they'll see certain areas aren't really utilizing it. And they'll go, well, these people just don't understand it, or, you know, they start blaming the observer, whatever it is. And I got to go in and remind them, hey, let's step back and look at it. You guys have multiple languages spoken out here. Was this new checklist displayed in those languages? And what we find out is not always. There's some inconsistency there. So language breakdowns and getting them in those languages form that's easy to use, and let them be the ones that help translate through it, because what I found, Google Translate is a good tool, but it's not a perfect tool. So utilizing those third-party translator services, or if you have internal translation services, those can go a long ways as well. These sound like simple things, but these are the things that keep popping up in our evaluations that builds to stagnant programs and why people disengage. You also want to look at your training, assess your training. How do you bring new employees for onboarding? Typically, observer training gets significantly pared down and performed in-house. The biggest thing as we see is when you implemented that BBS program, whether it's 15 years ago or 15 months ago, whether you handle that in-house or you buy an external third-party partner, whatever model you chose, I'm guessing your initial BBS training was significant. Whether it was 4 hours, 8 hours, 2 days, whatever model it is that you followed, over time those things get pared down because of cost. And then, you know, 10 years later, your onboarding training is 5 slides in their general safety training, and that's all it is. But from the onset, it was a huge, intensive classroom, on the floor training. They had coaches. You brought in consultants, and you had all this. You're hitting on all cylinders, and then 10 years later, it's just 5 slides with a voiceover and a video from the CEO that says it's important. And then we move on to lockout, tagout training, and then we tell them how to get their clothes in the laundry unit, and this is where you go for your HR number. It's just drawn in with everything else. So be really critical of where your training is at, and what initial training, you know, what made it successful, and why aren't you doing it now? What made it successful then is maybe what you need to bring back. Where are your breakdowns? Look at your materials. Look at the material overhaul. Is it yours? Is it licensed? Did you just go to Google and print it from somebody else? Who's doing the training? Be critical. If you go out and find the dry eyes guy off of the commercial and they're up there doing the training, dude, you're going to put some people to sleep. I'm a high energy taker, and dry eyes guy is going to have me asleep in like 10 minutes. So sometimes there is value in going out and getting a person or a firm or networking with other locations within your organization, whatever it is. Getting the right person can be more important than the right material. Hands-on. I mean, you all know this, but I'm going to drive it home again. Classroom is only one of 2 pieces in this. You do the classroom, but you got to get them the hands-on, and they got to have coaches there with them, doing co-observations, showing them, hey, yeah, that was a great job, but also I saw this. I didn't know. Let's go over and talk to the person. You know, what gets easy, and when they feel like they have somebody in the trenches with them, whether you're going to use the term coach. I love coach. I love sports, so I use the term coach. You don't have to. But give them somebody, some people use facilitator, whatever term you want to use, doesn't matter. Give them somebody they feel like they can go to, somebody that's a mentor in it. That goes a long way. I'm kind of getting off a little bunny trail here, which I'm gonna. But that goes right in. Are you allowing a preseason? What I mean by that is before you hold them to a metric or accountable, do you give them a month or two to kind of be their preseason before you hold them to a goal or a metric or whatnot, or before you start including them? Do you allow a little preseason time for them to get their feet going? And for those that are on the call that don't have BBS, they're looking to implement it, allow a preseason time in there. But I think everyone on has some form of behavior-based safety. You're looking for tips to revamp and continuously improve. So as you look at training, what made you successful when you implemented it? What were those successful points, and are you still doing them? If you're not, why not? Can you go back to it? Can you bring those things back? Maybe it's a third-party trainer. Maybe it isn't. Maybe it's a material overhaul. Maybe there's some continuous education. There's lots of conferences and not just conferences, materials out there from the academia world, from the consulting world, from your peers, other organizations that are doing BBS, what they've learned. There's so much available now for continuous education that you can go out and further yourself. The next piece that you'll want to look at in your assessment, you're identifying where your gaps are in your Stagnant BBS program, is your steering team. People use different terms here. I've heard people call them creation teams, coaching teams, steering teams, facilitator teams, steering committees, whatever version or term that you use. Who makes it up? Are you going out and getting the top performers, or are you just getting who's available? Are people being voluntold, or do they want to be there? We all know the difference. Some of it's outside of your control. A lot of times what happens early on when a program is implemented, everybody's excited, the operation staff's behind it, they're all supporting it, and when you ask for the top performers, you get them, but as time goes on, those people get promoted, they roll off the steering team, and new people come on, and that same excitement isn't there, and over time, it kind of dies down. Things to look at as well is how often are they meeting? What's the agenda? Is management involved, or is it kind of a hands-off? Union, non-union environments operate differently. Those relationships between the steering team and the management might look different. But being involved in the agenda, having clearly defined roles and responsibilities can go a long way. These are simple things. You know, you kind of go back like 4-H 101 for those that were in 4-H. Go back and grab that 4-H model. You know, have a chair, chairperson, co-chair, you know, and those things, communications chair. Those simple roles and responsibilities can help streamline and maximize efficiency. I know this doesn't sound like ground-shaking, high scientific stuff, but this is what we're continually finding, and it's those simple little things that go the longest way in the revamps. Management visibility. You know, a lot of the time I'll see in a survey results or whatever it is, people say, we don't have management engagement. What does management engagement look like? Do they need to be on the floor doing observations? Are they not in the meeting rooms? You know, they're pulling the purse strings for you to get together. You know, what does management engagement look like in visibility? And that's different for every organization. You need to define that internally for yourselves. But when we go in and revamp, one of the things that we'll do with management teams is we get them involved in the review process. Hey, no matter what level of management, your middle management, upper management, frontline management, whatever level of management that you're in, when these observations are coming in, are you getting involved in reviewing and feedback and coaching and those things? That's the number one way that visibility flies up the chart with frontline employees is hey, I did this observation, and my management staff, they were there and reviewing and letting me know how I did. They gave me feedback. That goes a long way. Observer breakdowns. Things that we find is complicated, integral submittal processes. So whether you're doing paper or you're doing electronic, just do it. Just do a simple analysis. Is it easy? Go through the process. Go through it with a new person and watch them go through the form submittal process, whatever it is that you use, and just step back and look at it. Because most of you that are on the call today, you're pretty computer savvy. You got on a GoToMeeting. That means you answered an email, you opened it, you subscribed to attend this, so you knew how to type, and then you opened a GoToMeeting. That's pretty high level stuff. Not all of your frontline employees have that same savviness. So it can be quite the undertaking if you have an electronic submittal system. You know, it can be embarrassing for a person to say they don't type well, or they don't read real well, or they're not comfortable moving the mouse. And those things can be very frightening. And I'm not saying this just because to be generic, or, you know, oh, this is the baby boomers through the millennials. In all revamps, we find this, and it's the number one thing. What are we doing to help them in the process? So the simple review of the submittal process can go a long way. Who's reviewing the completed observations for quality? You know, that's the what's in it for me factor dies off, because it's like, well, no one ever looks at them. Nothing ever gets done with them. I never see anything. Who's reinforcing the behaviors with the observers? Co-observations. Go out and coach them. Are you doing periodic evaluations with your observers? Are your supervisors and coaches and management team, are they each individually sponsoring observers? And do they have a quarterly assessment where they can see, hey, the company is identifying 15 to 20 behaviors and you're identifying about 3 to 5. You know, hey, maybe we can go out and do some target. Let's go work together on this. Those coaching sit-down sessions typically are 5 to 10 minutes, quarterly or semi-annually, whatever method works for you. Some people like monthly. That might be a little overboard for some of your environments. Find what works for you. But that sit-down dedicated one-on-one time for a facilitator or whatever methodology you use with that observer, that dedicated one-on-one time, immediately following that for the next week or two, you'll see your critical observations fly up the charts. So constantly evaluate the quality. Another tip that we implement with revamps is have a milestone path. Put out a plan and a roadmap of what milestones will be significant, and then also how are you going to celebrate. Now, I mean celebrate. I don't mean by starting a bonfire, eating s'mores, singing kumbaya, okay? So there's lots of different ways to keep it simple. Food is awesome. Food goes a long way. Ice cream. Holy cow. This time of year, on a little ice cream party, 10:30 in the morning. Hey, look, it's 10:30 on the dot Central Time. Look at that. But 10:30, boom, we're going to have an ice cream party. Hey, why do I have this ice cream cone? Because we hit our 10,000 observation in our BBS program this year. This is awesome. Sweet. Pizza parties, donuts, a video message from your senior staff. Not just saying, hey, thanks for hitting the 10,000. What does it mean? What does it mean that you hit the 10,000 observation? What does it mean that you had 100 barriers identified and removed? What does that mean to the organization? And let that highest level individuals, not your safety director, the operations team. What does this mean? Because we had 1,000 observations, because we went out and had 100 barriers fixed, because we went out and had 1,500 at-risk behaviors seen, stopped, and coached in our process, we were able to get us and our coworkers and our team members home to their loved ones and people weren't getting hurt. We weren't making mistakes. We were more profitable and more efficient than our competitors. We're better in the marketplace. We're able to be more sustainable as an organization. All these things affect your livelihood. We're able to offer opportunities. That's what it means. Make that connection back to operations. And leading up to it, hype it up. Get your marketing department. Get your Drew Prohaska in there. Hey, Drew, man, let's get together. Let's hype this thing up. We're going to hit that 5,000 observation next month. Let's communicate it out to everyone. Hey, whoever hits that 5,000, just like being that, 1 million shopper at Walmart, you get like a $100 gift card, and they got the counter up there. Put it out there. Let it be a target. Communicate it. Don't let it be a secret thing. And you will just see the observations just fly up the charts. People get excited. And some of those prizes are simple gift cards, like a $50 gas gift card. You'll just see people just go completely bonkers over it. And I have seen people go as far, organizations, go as far as give a vacation day. Whoever enters the winning 5,000 observation gets a half day or a full day vacation off. Now, most of you on the call probably don't have that ability to make that decision, but these are just what other people have done, and it goes a long, long way. So don't just put out a target goal of just how many observations completed. Unintentional consequences could drive pencil whipping. If I'm getting close to the 5,000th, I'm just going to sit at the computer and keep entering until I hit it. Probably not what we want, right? So have other milestones in there, observation or barriers identified and removed and completed on time, and those things. Find milestones that people have to do, and have multiples in there, and have a plan and a roadmap laid out so it's not so sporadic. Those go a long way. I have an evaluation piece on data collection. I think we hit this pretty good. Paper, electronic capabilities, metric communication. So I just have a few examples of metric communication. Let people know what the top at risk are. Okay. So this is a live in time. This is the last rolling 30 days. So if the top at risk for your company is travel paths, workspaces are clear and free of debris, appropriate housekeeping is maintained, then boom. Here's the thing though. The immediate thought is, okay, that's our top at risk. Let's go run around and do safety blitzes and find people doing these wrong. This isn't a revamp. What I tell people, when you see your top at risk, communicate this out and say, hey, this afternoon, I want all 10 of you observers to go out and find travel paths and workspaces free of debris. I want you to catch those right. Go out and find people doing them good. That's the breakdown in BBS. Why they get stagnant? We go out and want to find wrong. Go out and find good. When you see something like this, that wearing PPE and footwear in required areas, properly stacked, seatbelt, team member avoids standing on pallets. If those are your top at risk, go out and find people doing them good. That's what's going to drive your BBS program. And when you think back to when you implemented it, that's how you started. You flipped your culture by having those positive conversations. Go back to it. So when you see your top at risk, go target these for good. Go tell people to catch people doing them right. That's what's going to help flip them. Get it visible. This image right here should be on every break room. You should have this on the wall, on the computer screen. This should be live, living data. Everybody should be able to rip off your top 5, just like naming the 7 steps of lockout tagout. It should be bing, bang, boom. Here you go. What's our top 5 right now? It should be living data. Another way to pump it out and put it out as a visual is let them know how they're making a difference. Okay, what's their feedback? All right, so here you have a screenshot of a visual. If I'm an observer and I go in to add my next observation, I can see the feedback. Visibility is the key. Constantly keeping how they're making a difference. What action items are assigned to me? What are closed and what's overdue? Obviously, I got some work to do. I got like 4 that are overdue. So I'm a bad boy. I got to get these fixed. Okay, but over here, Tim Boyer, who's my coach, he's giving me 5 out of 5. It doesn't matter what academia level I am. I could be a 10th grade reading level individual, and I understand 5 stars is good because I love college football and 5-star recruits. Those guys hit. Those guys go to the NFL. I understand that. 5-star, that's easy. I want to be a 5-star. So there you go. Keep it visible and simple. There's some easy tips. As you can tell, I get pretty excited. I love this stuff. I love when we let people know how to do it. Common breakdowns, though, we stop evaluating our checklist. We start engraving them in stone, and we never change them. Those are living animals. Your risk and your environment and your organization is constantly changing. So should your BBS program. It should be a constant evaluation. Getting eyes on completed observations. Get them reviewed. And communicate back to your observer. Let them know that something's been done with what they've communicated with. Low participation percentage for total population is a major red flag that can be a stagnant program. Look at, do you have a mandatory or is it a voluntary program? Sometimes mandatory programs had good intentions, and then over time it just becomes another thing we got to do. Just like every other thing that we have to do. Steering team members, are they your true champions, or are they just, they're available? Oh, yeah, Steve, Julie, Rob, Bill, Bob, all of them, they're on there. They don't really do anything. They have donuts in the morning, you know, or is it the Tigers? You got the, man, Jim Bob, he's going places, and then boom, we're going to put him on our BBS team. Many times the pushback from, I don't know if we have any Steve Bobs or Jim Bobs or Julie's or Robs on here. If we do, I apologize. I wasn't trying to call people out, just pulling names. But many times what happens is operations get a little protective of their top performers. They don't want them on a bunch of committees and stuff. They want them doing what they're good at. So that's a challenge to work through. But the thing is about busy people, they find a way to get stuff done, and getting stuff done is those are the people we want on your steering teams. So some revamp tips and recap here that can help you. Behavior targeting. Look at your empirical data. Okay, so when you go back, or maybe you're sitting in your office, when you get done with this, we're at 10:40, it looks like, or 10:39. When you get done, go back and look at your empirical data. Go out and safety blitzing, do targeting. Grab a coach and a facilitator and a few observers and say, hey, go take 15 minutes and let's target these 3. Let's go out and target these 3 behaviors. Let's go out. You 3 go out, and you go out and catch people doing, putting up safety ladders up correctly. Okay, go out and catch them doing it right. You 3 go out and find people wearing their seatbelt. You 3 go out and find people cleaning up debris and clutter and keeping aisles ways clear. Go out and target those right. Go out and catch people doing them safe. Those are quick, little, easy, inexpensive things you can do that aren't super formal changes to your program, but can be little things you can do right now. So if you have shifts and departments and locations that are, you know, by and large are struggling, and you want to do little revamp things to help them on a micro level, a micro revamp could be behavior targeting. That's something we've seen a lot of success with. More formal could be checklist changes. One revamp tip is, you know, your more formal programs out there, the observer will have the checklist in hand. It looks more like an audit. Maybe take the checklist out of the hand. Stop printing them. One of the most recent revamps, which we'll get to, is they used to print all their observations. Now they don't. Now they're reference guides. You have the conversation, then you reference them later. You focus more on the organic, natural, genuine conversation and reference the checklist later. So not only revamping them, but maybe take the form out of their hands or change up what's on the form month to month based on your empirical data. We've seen success in using third-party trainers. Okay, sometimes I can go in and say the exact same thing the safety director said, and people go, yeah, Joe said it. That sounds great. And the safety director will look at me and they'll be like, I said the exact same thing yesterday. Well, guess what? I don't wear your logo, and I came from 1,000 miles away, so now I'm an expert. It stinks. For those of you that are on the call that are safety directors, you're going, yep. You bring in a different person, an exciting person, someone they can relate to in different facets. It can go a long way. But you got to get the purse strings pulled for that. You got to get your chief operating staff and your bean counters, your CFOs, and those people. They got to be on board. They got to see the investment in it. Cultural assessments. Are you doing surveying? Are you bringing them in and pinpointing areas of opportunity and pinpointing where you're successful? Also, I'm going to be a little contradictory here. If you have a volunteer program and over the years the volunteering's gone down, maybe you bring in and you mandate it for a little while. Or if you've had a mandatory process and you have a metric, maybe you go to a volunteer or a reduced rotating designated observer. Those little change ups in it, and it's very cyclical. There's things that maybe you did 5, 6, 10, 12 years ago, you're coming back to, do those things again. And then those things you were doing 3 years ago, maybe cycle them off. It's very cyclical. It's a constant living animal. There's not a one-stop fix it for all of it. It's going to be a lot of these little efforts that make it. So for my Ohio people that are on, I think I got a couple on. Hi, Ryan. How you doing? Now we got to talk results. So here's results for those people out there that are looking to take back to their senior staff and want to communicate how other revamps have been successful. Well, let's look at our first one. This was a informal revamp. So this was a process that got implemented in late 2014. They had a full 18 months into it, but they were doing the designated, but smaller. So they had about 20% of their population, and about halfway through, they went from the small population to everybody. They put a metric. Everybody had a monthly goal. So they kind of went from the voluntary, and then they went to the more mandated, and for them, it worked. Okay, so this is the informal, and the results that they were able to see is, they saw a direct correlation to their work comp. Their work comp, total dollar payout, nosedive over the years. The biggest thing was their overall participation. Some other results here for you to take back, and we'll be, these are available after the fact. I believe Drew's going to be sending out the PowerPoint will be made available for everyone, and he'll give how to get that at the end, I'm sure. But you see some different results here. The one that I like is this next slide here. What this really shows is that, sorry about that. What this one really shows is that they started the program in 2014, and you can see where their numbers, the reporting as the culture got a little more comfortable went up. And then in the August of 2017 is when they went to everybody, okay? And that's where you started to see their incident rates and severity and all that started to drop for them, okay? So that informal going to everybody from the designated, that worked for them, okay? And then everybody wants to know sustainability. What's our sustainability? So this is a good one. First quarter over first quarter, those total days away, that real severe stuff, they've now only been able to nosedive cut it over the years, but they've also been able to sustain it and keep it down as well. That's what you're able to see here. The second revamp that we'll show here, so you'll be able to take this back and display it with your senior staff, is this is a organization that had 2 existing programs, and they did a very, very formal revamp. This is the one that had the paper copy and then went to the non-paper copy where they referenced them after the fact. They built in a strong barrier program to get those physical barriers fixed and identified. And in one fiscal year, these are the results they were able to see. Yep, Jonathan had asked, will these slides be made available? Yes, they will. And we'll get those out so you can share them as well. Oh, and then you respond to thank you. Okay, so these results that you see from one fiscal year to the other, first thing that stands out is for an organization with over 3,000 employees to have a 1.4 total incident rate or recordable rate, whichever metric it is that you use, they were already in a very good place. And then they saw success from there continue. Where we really see it for them is in, and I'll go to the next slide, is in their severity reduction. From one fiscal year to the next, they saw a 93% severity reduction. So this is an organization that had BBS, a very mature 15-year program, and just those simple little things as rebranding and taking the forms out of the hands and revamping the checklist. And they did on-site training for all the individuals. Everybody is expected to be a part of the program, but they don't put a high goal out there. They put a low goal, but what they found by doing that is people exceed over the goal. And that has been really successful for them. The biggest thing when you're looking at revamping is then trying to prevent your next relapse. So rotating the right coaches, making it desirable to be a coach or to be a steering team member. I've seen mature processes where they will make it an application process. So to move up in that organization, you need to have that you've been on the steering team. That becomes a high desirable role. It's an application process, those things. But find what works for you. Have a set schedule to reevaluate your checklist. Okay, keep that in the forefront. Review the data to determine what specific behaviors and checklists need to be targeted. Recruit top performers. Incorporate designated site BBS coaches. Have people at each site that are either head coaches or have a coaching team, people that are there. And I keep using the verb as coach, and I've got Frank here who's messaged me. Some of this sounds familiar. Yeah, it does. I mean, this is what we do when we go in and do revamps. We bring in the verbiage coach. Coaches are positive. We're not officers. We're not cops. We're coaches. Have people that are respected, that are take pride in their work, and let those be your coaches. And continually evaluate through auditing and safety surveys and interviewing your cultural gaps and your assessments. So as we come to the end here, it looks like we're right about 10:50. So that should allow us our 10 minutes for answering any questions. There's my information. If some of this stuff is interesting, you'd like to continue to discuss in dialogue offline, reach out to me. This is what we do. So we'd love to come in and help your organization. If some of this information is useful, Drew, I'll go ahead and turn the mic over to you, and you can kind of explain the process for them for getting the PowerPoint.